Michael Daly and Sherry Guess are high school sweethearts, young, in love, and bursting with hope.
When she came home, it was like, wow, I have a date with Hawaiian Mike.
But as the years pass, this all-American couple begins to fall apart.
Sherry told her, you'll get Michael over my dead body.
When I say she's a wacko, that's what I mean. She was a wacko.
Secret vices lead them down a dark path of abuse, conspiracy, and the ultimate sin.
There had been just a horrible struggle in that car.
She intended to do a human sacrifice for her boyfriend. The two of them coming together was just a match made in hell.
Love may be blind and marriage bliss, but divorce is murder. In the late 1970s, the city of Ventura is home to teenager Sherry Guess, a quintessential Southern California beauty.
Beautiful smile, long blonde hair. She was a typical California girl. She was involved in a lot of activities, Indian maidens, brownies, 4-H, Pioneer Girls, all the way up through high school.
Sherry meets high school student Michael Daly in her sophomore year. Michael is half Mexican and half Japanese. To Sherry, he's downright exotic.
His nickname at school was Hawaiian Mike because he looked more Hawaiian than anything else. Most of her friends at school thought he was really fantastic, and they all wanted to go out with him because he was very handsome. He made a very, very good impression.
But it's Sherry who grabs Michael's attention.
Mike.
I'm Sherry.
When she came home, it was like, wow, I have a date with Hawaiian Mike. We met him, he was very polite. Always, what time do you want her home? And he always had her home at the moment she was supposed to be there.
The couple dates all through high school.
When they got out of high school and they both graduated, much to her mother's dismay, they moved in together before getting married.
Not what I would have liked, but you know, you have two choices. You can lose your daughter or accept the circumstances.
Everything right.
Michael gets a night shift job as a stock boy at a supermarket in neighboring Oxnard.
He was a real hard worker, got along with everybody, just a real sociable person.
Pretty soon, Sherry gets a cashier job at the same store. Their paychecks aren't much, but they're enough to get by.
She loved when she was working as a checker. Everybody enjoyed her. I enjoyed being around her just because she always had a smile.
Sherry and Michael are barely into their early 20s when they marry in 1982. Young and in love, it's them against the world.
They had a cruise for their honeymoon, and she had a very small wedding with just immediate family.
In spite of the newlyweds' young age, Michael's parents are pleased.
They were very nice people, loved Sherry.
Sherry's parents approve as well.
We thought he was a really nice young man.
Sherry's devotion to Michael knows no bounds.
Sherry did a lot of the chores. That's what she wanted to do, was build her home and have people be nurtured in her home.
Sherry would get up and she would turn on the shower so he wouldn't have to wait for the shower to warm before he got in.
Psychotherapist Stacy Kaiser and forensic psychologist Brian Russell are concerned about Sherry's overindulgent attitude towards Michael.
Sherry strikes me as an old-fashioned girl who wants to dote on her husband. And so if he's working the night shift and needs to be fed in the middle of the night, she's exactly the kind of person that's gonna get up and cook for him.
I think that sometimes people do things at the beginning of a relationship that they're gonna have a hard time sustaining over time, and to the extent that the relationship is built upon or dependent upon things like that, it can bode poorly for the longevity of the relationship.
Sherry gives birth to their first son in 1988 and proves to be a devoted mother. And 2 years later, with a second boy on the way, Sherry and Michael need more room.
They moved to the house on Channel, and that's where the second son was born.
With Michael working nights, he and Sherry spend less and less time together. It puts a strain on the family.
He was a good dad, but he was not home a whole lot. After the second boy was born, he spent less and less time at home and more time sleeping when he was at home. And yet I know he loved those boys.
When Michael is at home, he's increasingly critical of Sherry.
There were times when I would say, it's a good thing Sherry's married to you, Mike, because I wouldn't put up with that.
Before long, Michael begins to feel trapped by his new family.
His heart wasn't in it. He really wanted to be somewhere else. But he went through the motions.
Sherry was very young. She was vulnerable. First boyfriend, loved this guy to pieces. He could be very charming, good looking to her. And throughout their marriage, it just continued to be that way.
Over time, Michael develops a wandering eye and a libido to match.
I don't think Michael was ever 100% faithful to Sherry.
He'd get in his car to go get gas, and he'd be gone for hours and hours. Then he'd finally come back.
Michael's life away from home isn't limited to womanizing. Over the years, he also develops a substantial drug habit.
I think he was into some heavier drugs, and that pickles your brain.
Instead of blaming Michael for his shortcomings, Sherry blames herself.
When she got pregnant, she got gestational diabetes and put on a lot of weight. And she hadn't lost that weight even with the second pregnancy.
Like all of us, you know, she always wanted to lose a few pounds.
When she'd stand up, she'd get dizzy and almost fall over from lack of eating.
It's perfectly fine to try to keep yourself in shape and keep yourself attractive and everything so that the relationship stays mutually attractive to both partners. But if you're feeling the need to do that stuff to prevent your significant other from wandering, A, the relationship's unhealthy, and B, it's not likely to work.
When I look at a relationship like Sherry's and Michael's, there ultimately has to reach a breaking point. Either Sherry is going to explode because she can't handle it anymore, or Michael is going to reach a point where he's just so disappointed that he doesn't want to be around her anymore.
Sherry's determined to keep Michael's attention, and she doesn't stop with dieting.
Changing the way she dressed, changing the way she did her hair, things that she thought would make her more attractive to her husband.
But the makeover doesn't change a thing.
Even though she would try to dress in a more sexy manner, he would insult her and be mean to her no matter how hard she tried.
Things get worse when Michael's employer transfers him to another store branch. The Santa Barbara location is 40 miles up the coast, and the distance allows Michael to further indulge in his vices.
And I think he liked this because it gave him an opportunity to make contacts with other women.
He liked very much to flirt with young women, either that worked at the market he worked at or customers.
Michael?
Yeah.
Michael's frequent absences and lack of respect take their toll on Sherry Daly.
She didn't have that sparkle in her eyes anymore. You can just see the sadness in her.
Oh, you got some new clothes. Good.
It isn't long before Sherry's love for Michael is put to the test as things get worse, much worse.
He's so mean all the time.
He would spend 3 days on a cocaine high.
Sherry was very afraid that Child Protective Services could come in and perhaps take the children away.
By their late 20s, high school sweethearts Sherry and Michael Daly are married with children. To outsiders, and even to her own family, Sherry has it all: a home, a family, and a job.
She was so ecstatically happy, and she was such a good mother. It was a joy to watch her with her boys, and to see her so happy.
But appearances aren't everything. In 1989, 7 years into the marriage, Michael begins an affair with coworker Sally Lowe.
She had just gone through a divorce, and she was a sad, depressed person at the time. And Michael sensed that, and he took up this relationship with her.
While he's in Santa Barbara, Sherry thinks that Michael is staying with friends who conveniently live close to his work.
She didn't know he was staying with another woman.
Michael pours out his relationship troubles to his new girlfriend.
It's never good enough for everything I do.
Sherry doesn't understand me. She can't fulfill my needs like you can. We have something so much better. I would want to marry you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. There's only one problem, and that's Sherry.
At home, things continue to deteriorate.
The Dalleys never seemed to have enough money to pay their bills, and this was something that terribly troubled Sherry.
Sherry quits her job at the grocery store to open a home daycare.
She wanted to stay home with her boys, and daycare was what she wanted to do because she loved children.
She'd accommodate all the mothers, whether they worked at night, weekends, anytime. She would go ahead and open her daycare for them.
As far as Sherry was concerned, these were her kids. They weren't daycare kids, they were her kids.
I think Michael probably had mixed feelings about Sherry's childcare business. On the one hand, he probably liked the income that it derived for the family. On the other hand, he probably didn't like the fact that it enhanced Sherry's level of independence from him.
Michael's used to being doted on by Sherry. He's used to being the center of attention. Once they had children, some of that attention was taken away. And now that she has her childcare business, even more of his attention is getting taken away. He's not used to this, and so it's going to bother him.
As Sherry's business starts to thrive, Michael is using more and more of their money to fuel his cocaine habit.
Sherry was very afraid and had told friends that she was very afraid that if Michael had drugs in the house, that Child Protective Services could come in and perhaps take the children away.
We didn't know about his extracurricular activities at all.
Because Michael works nights, he's often at home while Sherry's with her daycare kids.
And he used to lock himself in the garage.
I'm tired.
No, seriously.
Sherry, leave me alone.
And stay in the garage for hours in the afternoon when he was using.
For me, if I had suspected that, I wouldn't have had my kids there.
A parent abusing drugs under the same roof as their children is child abuse. It's not a, hey, please go to rehab situation. It's a, get out of this house until you've been to rehab and established a sustained pattern of clean and sober behavior.
Sober or not, Michael's libido is insatiable. Even with Sherry and his Santa Barbara mistress on the side, he needs more.
There was an area of Port Hueneme that was known for prostitution, and Mike Daly was known to frequent that area and do hard drugs with prostitutes.
He used a street name of Mark when he would deal with prostitutes or drug purchases.
Where's all our money going?
This is your stuff.
With money now tighter than ever, Sherry urges Michael to get some help with his addiction. Michael refuses.
She did want to help him. She loved him that much that she wanted him to be well.
After they had had a couple of children, that made her really want to stay in the relationship and make it work.
Michael Daly's using drugs and he's seeing prostitutes, and he complains to a prostitute that he doesn't have money to buy his kids shoes. And the prostitute is thinking to herself, well, you just spent $40 on cocaine, $40 on a motel room, and $40 on me, and you're telling me that you don't have money to buy your kids shoes.
I think he felt trapped being married and having kids, and I think he wanted to just live a wild lifestyle.
Sherry's doing everything to keep it together for her family's sake, but she's at the end of her rope.
He didn't want to spend any of his money on her. He wanted to spend all of his money on his toys and his girlfriends.
She would lament to her daycare customers, you know, I can only pay one bill a month. Which one am I going to pay?
And she finally got to the point, she says, Mom, I can't pay these bills. I just throw them in a brown paper bag and put them up on top of the refrigerator. He had her believing that if they got a divorce, he would take the house and the kids and she'd have nothing.
Sherry strikes me as a woman for whom Michael's need for her enabling, stabilizing presence in his life might have actually felt good for her, being needed in that way. But that is not a healthy reason to form or to remain in a relationship that is otherwise unhealthy.
For those of us watching Michael from the outside, we are viewing him as somebody who is rebellious, uncaring, narcissistic, and destructive. But from Michael's perspective, it may have been that he was just having fun, that he needed an outlet, that he was trying to escape the life that he feels like he has been forced and trapped to live.
You're crazy. I'm leaving.
Meanwhile, Michael's girlfriend, Sally, ends the relationship just as the company transfers Michael back to the Oxnard store. Sherry is happy, for now. But Michael is about to meet a new woman who will change everything.
I was worried, and I said, Sherry, you know, you're stalking Diana, you're gonna end up in jail.
When I say she's a wacko, that's what I mean. She was a wacko.
Sherry and Michael Daly marry young, and it isn't long before Michael feels trapped by the marriage. By 1994, Michael is back in the Oxnard grocery store, where he meets a new coworker, Diana Hahn.
She was in her 30s. She was not married, she didn't have prospects, she wasn't very successful. You know, she was kind of unremarkable, which has to hurt.
She was kind of a loner. She just kind of kept to herself and did her jobs.
He got very good at identifying women that had self-esteem issues or had some piece of the puzzle missing to where he could kind of gain that upper hand and be in total control.
Michael's instantly attracted to Diana, who, like him, is half Japanese. But initially, Diana is reluctant.
From what I understand, he pursued her for quite some time because she knew that he was married.
She falls for him just the same.
They had this Eastern culture connection that they felt was stronger than somebody from Western culture could even understand or appreciate.
When Michael is late for work one night, Diana leaves the store without punching out to go pick him up.
You can't leave the store and get in your car and drive away and being paid for that at the same time.
This behavior makes them far from popular at work.
Here's this guy, he's the perfect guy for her. He has these two beautiful children. She wants to be the wife. That's what motivated Diana Hahn.
She wanted to be part of Michael's life, and she wanted to have the children, and she wanted to have the lifestyle of the family.
She wanted Michael. Michael. If she got Michael, the kids would have gone elsewhere. I'm sure.
But Michael is drawn to Diana for other reasons.
Diana was not one of your missionary position people. And I think his wife was not like that. So I think that just excited him.
The two frequently take breaks during work to have sex.
When I say she's a wacko, that's what I mean. She was a wacko.
Before long, Sherry begins to suspect that Michael is fooling around.
She would find things in the house left by women that had been in there.
Calls would come in, or Mike would be really secretive about, you know, calls or pages.
While Michael makes no effort to hide his affair with Diana from his coworkers.
They knew Michael was married. They knew his wife, and they didn't particularly like Diana because Diana was not the kind of person that you would like.
Both Diana and Michael were very arrogant, and they felt that they were just smarter than everyone else.
Store manager Daryl Anderson transfers Diana to a day shift in the deli department.
He was still working nights, and now she was working days, so there was no conflict in the store.
But at home, it's a different story. Michael starts flaunting his affair with Diana to Sherry.
He had this pillow made, and he put it on the bed where he and Sherry slept, and would not allow her to get rid of it.
Michael! What is this?
Go back to bed.
I'm like, I can't believe you would allow that, you know, in your room.
He was rubbing it in his wife's face that he was having this an affair, and it was a very callous thing to do.
That's when it was like, Sherry, something has to change. He can't be doing this and trying to live both roles. You know, he has to be out of the house.
I think Sherry entered this relationship with a princess and prince illusion. And she's afraid that if she ends the marriage, that her whole illusion is crumbled.
Sometimes people like Sherry stay in terrible marriages because of low self-esteem. They don't think that they can find a better marriage. They don't think they can find a better partner than the one they have.
While Michael's past affairs tended to be anonymous prostitutes or out-of-town flings,
What are these?
now Sherry has a name and a face to put on her husband's infidelities.
She begged Michael not to see her anymore.
But Sherry's requests fall on deaf ears. By Christmas Day, 1995, over a year after the affair started, Sherry's relationship with Michael plummets to new depths.
Hi, Mom. Hi. Merry Christmas.
She called here twice on that day, and I wanted to say Merry Christmas to the boys, and she said, "He'll be back later. I'll have him call you." And much later, I heard that Michael had taken the boys to Diana's for Christmas and left her alone. And that broke my heart.
Sherry starts keeping tabs on Diana.
She'd call me and say, you know, I saw her Jeep today, or today I drove by to make sure she was at the house.
Finally, she's had enough. On January 12, 1996, Sherry confronts them both.
He was very forceful in trying to protect her marriage and told Diana Hahn in no uncertain terms, "Get away from my husband and leave us alone."
I said to Sherry, somebody's gonna get hurt, you know, and I said, Sherry, you're gonna end up in jail. You know, you're stalking Diana, you're gonna end up in jail.
As the affair between Michael and Diana heats up, Sherry finds herself feeling like she needs to confront them, and she does this. I think she's trying to find a way to desperately make them stop. Only what she's not realizing is that she seems to just be drawing the two of them closer together.
The affair continues. Then, in March of that year, witnesses say Sherry confronts Diana again, this time outside her workplace.
It's our family. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take your husband and I'm gonna take your kids.
Sherry wasn't meek. Sherry could have taken me down in a heartbeat.
And you could have him over my dead body.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Sherry, to me, I saw courage that I know I wouldn't have. I would have said, take the guy. You know, take the guy and walk away.
She used to sit down at the table and go over her bills and say, you know, I think I could make it on my own.
Sherry was ready to leave.
I could see Sherry's strength gathering.
But when Michael arrives home from an overnight shift on the morning of May 6, 1996, the driveway is full of parents waiting to drop their children off with Sherry. Sherry is nowhere to be found. Everyone is baffled.
She was so responsible and loved those kids so much that Sherry never would have just left.
Right away, Michael calls the Ventura Police Department to file a missing persons report.
The police department won't take a missing persons report on an adult unless they've been missing for 72 hours or more.
My wife has been kidnapped.
Or there are suspicious circumstances. When he called, there were really no suspicious circumstances.
Michael then calls Sherry's mother, Carlene, and tells her Sherry has been kidnapped.
Carlene, this is Michael.
Why would they take her? We don't have any money. We don't have anything, you know, as far as a ransom.
No, she's been kidnapped. Listen.
He was saying things like, I think she's been nabbed. You know, I think they got her.
Because she would not leave her kids. She would not leave her daycare kids in that situation.
The daycare parents offer to help out.
The parents said, look, you know, Ventura's a small town. I'm sure Sherry is fine. We'll go out and find her.
I remember people saying that, you know, she probably just got fed up and just was driving up the coast or leaving. And I just knew in my heart that that wasn't the answer.
And she's right. Soon, the search for Sherry will reveal the answer. And it's terrifying.
Her sister had witnessed a woman being arrested.
She had scratches on her face.
There had been just a horrible struggle in that car.
Sherry and Michael Daly's marriage is in tatters. In May 1996, after suffering years of Michael's bad behavior, Sherry goes missing. Less than an hour after they start looking, the daycare parents' search party finds Sherry's van in a department store parking lot.
She had gone to the store that day to shop for Mother's Day gifts.
Sherry Daly's keys were in the ignition. Her license was attached to her key ring along with some other items. The purchases that she had made in the department store were still on the floor in her van, and she was nowhere to be found.
That's when they knew that something was wrong.
Michael rushes to the scene in a panic.
Now there were suspicious circumstances. He called the Ventura Police Department again, and they sent an officer out to take a missing persons report.
Hours pass with no sign of Sherry, and hope is fading.
The officer's writing his report. It's about 10 o'clock at night. And he's going over everything that he had been told, and he goes, you know, this sounds like it could really be something bad.
The officer stops by the house to pick up a photo of Sherry. He's surprised to find that Michael's not home.
You'd be home, you'd be manning the phone, you'd be calling the hospitals, you'd be calling relatives, you'd be waiting to hear from authorities, but he was not home. The officer even had our dispatch center call the residence, and he could hear the phone ringing, and nobody was at the residence.
The following morning, Detective Sean Conroy attends a routine meeting at the station.
A female detective in the room said her sister had been at a local department store the day before and had witnessed a woman being arrested.
A woman who matches the exact physical description of Sherry Daly.
A teal-colored Nissan Altima stops kind of abruptly behind Sherry Daly's van.
Sherry Daly?
A woman wearing, what looked like a business suit gets out and engages Sherry Daly in a conversation right at the door of her van.
I'm not gonna ask you again, ma'am. Come with me, follow me. Step into
The woman then escorts her to the Nissan Altima, puts her in the back seat, kind of police-like, putting her hand on top of her head, guiding her into the back of the vehicle, just like you see on TV.
It's a relief. If Sherry was taken into custody, then she may be okay.
What we thought initially was that some other agency had come into our jurisdiction without notifying us, made an arrest.
But none of the neighboring police departments have any knowledge of the arrest. So who could have taken her? Detective Conroy begins interviewing Sherry's entourage.
The people we're interviewing were saying, you need to talk to Diana Hahn.
Conroy and his partner arrive at Diana's unannounced and find Michael's van parked outside her apartment.
Hello?
It's Michael Daly here.
She came to the front door in lingerie, fairly revealing. And she invites us in, and Michael comes from a back bedroom wearing just a pair of shorts. So we go, gee, Michael Holly's wife is missing, yet here he is at his mistress's house, apparently having just spent the night.
Sherry is missing, and Michael spends the night with Diana. So just think about this. There are two children whose mother is missing, and the father decides that the best place to be would not be at their side, but at the side of his lover.
Isn't this bizarre to you? I've been doing this for years. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
At the station, Detective Conroy sequesters Michael and Diana in different rooms. He asks Diana to write a summary of her activities on May 6th.
I went for a bicycle ride.
The day Sherry disappeared.
We can check on what she said and get an idea if she's being truthful with us.
Diana tells them that she spent that morning and afternoon alone, riding her bicycle.
To us, she's accounting for large blocks of time that we can't really check up on what she was doing.
In the other room, Michael makes a critical mistake. He asserts that he was home the night Sherry went missing.
And that was the first incident we had in the investigation where we knew Michael Daly was lying.
The cops know he wasn't home that night. And then investigators catch another lucky break.
An employee that worked at the supermarket she works for called and spoke to one of the detectives and said, "Have you guys noticed these scratches on Diana Hahn's forehead?"
Diana arrived for her May 6th shift looking like she'd just been in a fight.
Diana came in about an hour late for work, and she had scratches on her face.
So we asked her to move her hair to the side, and there are 2 scratches on her forehead that are very obviously made by fingernails.
She has an explanation. Diana tells Detective Conroy she fell off her bicycle, but the accident is nowhere in her written statement. It's also highly improbable.
You cannot fall off a bicycle without putting your hands down to break your fall.
She had no scratches on her arms, no scratches on her hands.
Detective Conroy has photographs taken of the scratches.
We didn't know exactly what her involvement was, but we were trying to tell her, Diana, you have a window of opportunity to help us and to help yourself. Don't let this opportunity pass you by.
Diana remains silent. Lacking any hard evidence, the cops have no choice but to let her and Michael go free.
From there, the detectives went to various rental car places because the car that was described for them by witnesses sounded like the kind of car that one might rent from a car rental place.
A week goes by, and the cops finally find what they're looking for.
A team of detectives went to the rent-a-car place at the airport. They gave Diana Hahn's name, and they ran her through the computer, and lo and behold, her name pops up.
Records show that Diana Hahn rented a blue-green Nissan Altima at Oxnard Airport on May 5th, the day before Sherry's disappearance. The same car described by the female police officer.
The contract required her signature and her initialing in about 4 different places. There was no question that she did not rent a car from that car rental agency.
Luckily for the cops, Diana returns the car with a broken rearview mirror.
The rental car company had to deadline the car and send it to Van Nuys to their main repair facility. So when we recover the car, it was, virtually loaded with evidence.
Detectives find traces of blood in the carpet, the floorboard, and the seats.
There had been just a horrible struggle in that car.
I was riding my bicycle all day.
Michael and Diana are called in for another round of interviews. Diana maintains her innocence and suggests that Sherry probably ran away with a lover. She asks Detective Conroy if she can speak with Michael.
He comes into the interview room, and at that point we leave, just hoping that they would say things to each other that might be incriminating.
Detectives watch and listen from behind a 2-way mirror.
You don't say nothing to him.
He started, telling her, look at me, and he was saying hi. And not like a greeting, but like the Japanese karate. And he'd say it. And she was like, hi. And he goes, no, look at me, look in my eyes, hi. And she starts going, hi.
Hi!
And it was like watching somebody pump up a deflated balloon. He told her in that interview that we had nothing, the police have nothing, that we're bluffing, and that they are going to walk out of there that day.
Michael is only half right.
They had enough probable cause to arrest her.
But they don't have enough evidence to charge her with any crime. The story breaks, and the local media have a field day. The news coverage has an unexpected impact on the investigation.
We started getting calls. We got a telephone call from a wig company in Oxnard that said, hey, that girl that I saw on TV, she came into our store and bought a wig.
According to the store's cashier, the customer in question said she wanted to look official, like a cop.
That she wanted to play a trick on somebody.
Detectives subpoenaed Diana Hahn's bank records, and we scanned them looking for purchases that she had made on or around the date of the abduction.
She had purchased shoes, a suit, crazy glue, windproof matches, large trash bags, and lighter fluid.
and an axe.
I think that Diana was a very incompetent murderess. She did a lot of things that were traceable that made it relatively easy for law enforcement to unravel what had happened.
She has no clue that anything is coming her way. She is so focused on what her agenda is, which is, let's get rid of Sherry, that she isn't thinking about what could happen to her.
Detectives look closer at the photograph of their prime suspect. Diana had definitely been involved in some kind of a fight.
We didn't see it at the time, but later on when the picture was blown up by the district attorney's office, it became very apparent that there were thin bruising marks on Diana Hahn's arm.
And as they dig deeper into Diana's life, they discover she has some strange hobbies, like witchcraft.
When they asked her about it, she said, no, I'm not really a witch. Yeah, sure, I studied that, but I studied a lot of different things.
Further digging uncovers an even more startling discovery.
She had told a coworker that her boyfriend had a birthday coming up and she intended to do a human sacrifice for her boyfriend.
My impression is that they would have just laughed it off because it seemed ridiculous.
Michael Daly's birthday is May 21st, 15 days after Sherry's disappearance. Evidence of a physical fight, an apparent abduction,
I'm not gonna ask you again, ma'am.
threats of violence and murder.
You could have my dead body.
Police suspect the worst, but Sherry is nowhere to be found. For now.
The police called and said, we want to tell you this before because it's going to be on the 6 o'clock news.
When devoted wife and mother Sherry Daly disappears in May 1996, all signs point to her husband Michael's mistress, Diana Hahn. With the Ventura Police Department focusing on its case against Diana,
she's not called anyone she loves, cares about. You really think she's alive?
they have little time to devote to the actual search for Sherry Daly.
We were completely taxed with the investigation that we had going.
As a week passed and maybe a couple of weeks passed, people obviously became very concerned for Sherry. And her friends and other members of the community set up search parties to go and look for her.
Mother's Day and my birthday came and I heard nothing from her, which also cemented the fact in my mind that she would never let those days go by without contacting me.
The Nissan Altima that Diana Hahn rented helps guide the search.
We knew that there was 126 miles on the rental car.
On June 1st, the search leads Kristen and her group to Cañada Larga Road on the outskirts of Ventura.
Cañada Larga is a very rural area with cattle ranches and not a lot of development.
A woman's shoe and a pair of sunglasses are spotted on the edge of a small canyon.
And he takes a stick and he kind of pulls at what appeared to be a spine, and there's a brassiere attached to it.
And sure enough, they came upon her skeletal remains that were already pretty far decomposed.
The police called and said, we want to tell you this before because it's going to be on the 6 o'clock news, that we have found remains, and I knew it was her.
Dental records confirm that the body is Sherry Daly's.
The medical examiner formed the opinion that her head had been severed from her body and that there was a mark in the vertebrae that was consistent with having used an axe similar to the one that Diana Hahn had purchased.
Investigators pieced together the events following Sherry's abduction.
Sherry Daly did not recognize Diana Hahn because Diana had on a wig that she had purchased, which was totally different than her own hair.
With Sherry subdued in the back of the rental car, Diana's next stop is Cañada Larga Road.
If you are going to try to hide or dump a body, it's a pretty good place to do it because there's not a lot of traffic in and out of there.
There was a struggle. And to me, right away, that was like, of course, Sherry, with whatever she could have fought with, she would have fought
Sherry's fight is in vain.
She wanted to make Sherry suffer. She wanted to be as violent as she could. She hated Sherry. She made that very clear.
But that's the kind of person Diana was. Diana wanted to hurt her, and Diana could be as cruel as possible.
Diana Hahn was willing to do anything to have a family.
By August 1st, nearly 3 months after Sherry's murder, detectives have enough evidence to charge Diana. They arrest her at work.
She was just very calm, very quiet, and just walked out with them, never said a word.
But the prosecution is certain that Diana Hahn didn't act alone, that Michael Daly had a hand in his wife's death.
How do you show that he was a conspirator? How do you show that he was the puppet master, that he was directing?
Diana Hahn could not have carried this out all by herself because there were certain factors that she had to have known in order to do this.
Namely, where Sherry would be on the morning of the abduction, something that only her husband would know. With Diana's trial still pending, detectives arrest Michael Daly on November 16, 1996. Police immediately call Sherry's mother, Carlene.
He's just been put in handcuffs. He's gone. And I thought, yay.
Michael!
There was a great deal of circumstantial evidence that he had planned this with Diana Hahn, and that she was in constant contact with him from moments before she abducted Sherry.
You don't get a divorce? Or you get a chip on this?
Michael's loose lips are his undoing.
Michael thought that people that got divorces were stupid because they had to pay alimony and child support.
And he made it clear with his worker colleagues that he would never do that he had ways to take care of that, and kind of intimating that you'd have that person hit or done away with, or they'd disappear.
In April of 1996, just a month before Sherry's disappearance, Michael tells his boss, Darrell Anderson, who moonlights as a financial planner, that he'd like to cash in Sherry's half of their investments. Darrell tells Michael he can't.
They're individual accounts, so hers is hers and yours is yours. And Mike said, well, what if something happened to her? And I said, well, then you would get the money because you would be in the estate.
Forget it.
The following week, Michael tells Darrell he managed to secure a bank loan instead.
When I look back at it now, it's kind of like he didn't want her to have that money.
That series of calls Michael receives from Diana on the day Sherry disappears is the final nail in the coffin. In particular, a call from Surfers Knoll Beach in the hours after Sherry's abduction.
I think she went there to clean any evidence in those outside showers.
Every move she made, she called him.
And I'm certain that she said, it's over, I did it.
And just where was Michael on the night of Sherry's disappearance? Police believe that he and Diana were out somewhere trying to cover their tracks. Michael's attorney insists that Diana acted alone.
Diana was a total wacko. And as far as I was concerned, she was the one that hatched the whole plan to get rid of Michael's wife so she could have Michael.
But at trial, a skeleton from Michael's past emerges out of the blue. His girlfriend during the 3 years he worked in Santa Barbara.
She was the best witness we could ever have had.
He laid out essentially a blueprint of his plan with this woman.
A blueprint for how Michael wants his wife's murder to be carried out.
He wanted her stabbed, and he wanted the knife to be twisted inside of her to inflict as much pain as possible. And other things that she told us that had not been made public. And as it turned out during our investigation, of course, that's exactly the way Sherry died.
He was fishing. He was looking for somebody who would take his plan forward.
On September 27, 1997, Diana Hahn is convicted and sentenced to life without parole for kidnapping, conspiracy, and the first-degree murder of Sherry Daly.
I think I have forgiven Diana because Diana was doing what Michael was manipulating her to do, and she was a weak person.
I think that that Diana Hahn was the one who actually physically killed Sherry Daly, but I think Mike wanted her dead and helped set the plot in motion to kill his wife.
On April 6, 1998, Michael Daly is found guilty of kidnapping, conspiracy, and the first-degree murder of Sherry Daly.
When it was announced that Michael Daly had been found guilty, people cheered.
I'm not sure whether I can ever forgive him. I don't think I can.
Michael is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
So the two of them coming together was just a match made in hell.
This is an emotionally tragic story, not only for Sherry, but for her kids, because ultimately they've lost both of their parents.
I see it as a cautionary tale about the damage that parents can do to children, not to mention to one another, when they put their own personal indulgences and desires in life ahead of their commitments and obligations to their spouse and to their children.
There's no way for me to describe, just in the words that I have, what Sherry meant to us. Definitely to my family and the influence in my girls. And then to her, the community around her. I mean, she just, she was an amazing woman.
Sherry and Michael's two boys are raised by Michael's parents.
But I miss her. I miss the things we could have done. I miss the things we might do. I miss the fact that she's not seen her boys grow up to be such fine young men.
It's a big loss. It's like a hole. I mean, time does heal, but it's always there.